He's one of the most influential thinkers of our time, a visionary, and a believer in the power of technology to reshape humanity's future.
Today, we are attempting to decode one of the most consequential and certainly one of the most controversial figures in modern technology, Sam Altman.
Yeah.
He isn't just the CEO of, the hottest company on the planet, OpenAI. He's been dubbed the Philosopher King, at the center of the AI revolution, a title that really hints at both his technical influence and, well, maybe his political ambition, too.
And that title, Philosopher King, I mean, it feels absolutely earned, doesn't it? His impact is it's historic.
Totally.
When you look at the phenomenon of ChatGPT, OpenAI's big breakthrough product, it just blew past giants like Instagram and TikTok in downloads almost instantly.
Incredible. Speed.
That level of adoption, it shows his influence is monumental, right? But his personal persona is intensely polarized. It really is.
How so?
Is he a true visionary, leading us to some kind of technological utopia? Or is he, like some of our sources suggest, more of a cunning, manipulative force, maybe obsessed with power and control?
And our sources really reflect that exact tension, don't they?
They absolutely do. It's fundamental.
Okay, let's try and unpack this enormous story. Our mission today is really to distill the knowledge from a truly fascinating stack of sources, including extensive excerpts from 2 recently released books that offer, well, starkly different portraits of this titan.
That's right.
We have The Optimist by Keech Hagee, which seems to lean heavily toward that visionary side, presenting him as, a strategic genius.
The saint narrative, almost.
And then we have Empire of AI by Karen Howe, which presents a much darker picture, power-obsessed, maybe ethically questionable narrative.
It's a sinner side, if you will.
Yeah.
And we're trying to connect these highly contradictory dots.
Right.
We're using these new books, some expert commentary, critical insider accounts, basically trying to give you a true shortcut to understanding the really complex human story behind all the code.
Which seems essential because to understand OpenAI, you really have to understand Altman, don't you?
You absolutely do. They're intertwined. So we're diving into his ambitious origins, that bizarre and complex corporate structure he set up for OpenAI.
Oh yeah, that structure's something else.
It really is. And then the dramatic 5-day firing and reinstatement drama back in November 2023.
Which was just wild to watch unfold.
Totally. And finally, his utterly ambitious vision for artificial general intelligence, or AGI.
And the defining tension of this whole saga, it seems, conflict that's baked right into OpenAI's DNA, and frankly, maybe into Sam Altman himself, is that battle between, rapid, accelerated innovation and the desperate moral need for responsible safety measures.
Exactly, that safety versus speed equation. It's the ethical battlefield we're really about to explore here.
It really feels like a profoundly human story wrapped up in world-changing technology.
It absolutely is.
So let's start at the beginning then. Where does that foundational drive, that relentless push to scale, where does it come from? He didn't invent code, right? He sort of invented the application of scale.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And you can trace a huge amount of that foundational ambition back to his family roots, specifically his father, Jerry Altman. Jerry was a sharp financial specialist, sure, but his passion wasn't just finance. It was affordable housing. He approached social good with the mind of a deal maker.
How did he apply that kind of mind to affordable housing? That sounds like a bit of a contradiction, maybe. Finance and social good?
Yeah, it might seem that way, but for him, it wasn't a contradiction at all. It was an opportunity for system leverage.
Leverage.
Yeah, Jerry Altman pioneered these incredibly creative ways of structuring deals. So instead of relying only on government grants, he used these complex financial mechanisms to attract significant private investment into low-income housing projects.
Ah, okay. So using the market for social goals?
Precisely. It was a sophisticated way of leveraging capital markets for social impact. And this strategy, the sources note, actually inspired federal law, specifically the Low-Income Housing Tax Credit Program, or LIHTC.
Wow. Okay, so that's an early foundational exposure, not just to ambition, but to scaled ambition, where complex deals are the vehicle for achieving a societal good on a national scale.
Exactly.
It wasn't just about building one good house. It was about changing how funding worked for millions of houses.
Precisely. It highlights his early lesson in thinking big. thinking systemically, using structural complexity for huge impact. It really sets the mental stage for the mindset his later mentor, Paul Graham, always pushed.
Which was?
Don't think in millions, think in billions. It's that knack for complex structuring aimed at global transformative impact.
Okay, so that's the father's influence. And then you have the complementary influence of his mother, Connie Gibbs-Stein, a dermatologist. The sources describe her as having a science brain and an almost ferocious work ethic.
Absolutely. She eventually became the main breadwinner, apparently, and her influence was massive. She instilled that relentless drive and confidence, in part through what the sources describe as daily, powerful affirmations delivered by both parents. It wasn't just simple encouragement. It was actively building this deep internal belief system focused on achievement, on self-efficacy.
Right.
His mother even famously said he was born an adult, which highlights how intensely mature and maybe cerebrally focused he was, even from a young age.
So this family background basically planted the seeds for that high-impact, high-stakes, structurally complex approach he'd later bring to Silicon Valley.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. The groundwork was laid early.
So those seeds are planted, and then he enters Silicon Valley via the classic startup origin story, the Stanford dropout.
Well, it was a conditional dropout, which is actually incredibly telling about his commitment, I think.
Conditional?
Yeah, he left Stanford in 2005, but only as a condition for getting a significant $5 million investment from Sequoia Capital into his first company, Looped.
Ah.
The investors essentially demanded total focus. You know, you must be all in or we're out, that kind of thing.
Okay. And Looped was a location-based social app. Sounds like it immediately ran into a wall of problems. This must have been that grinding search for product market fit we hear about, a brutal learning curve.
Oh, it was. By all accounts, it was a painful, grinding experience that really shaped his view of the market. They faced high user churn.
People leaving the app.
Yeah, exactly. Serious privacy issues, too. I mean, users were understandably spooked by an app constantly broadcasting their location back then.
Sure.
And critically, they were totally dependent on the wireless carriers. This was the pre-iPhone mobile world, remember?
Right, where the carriers held all the cards.
They dictated everything. What apps could run, how they ran, how they were distributed. Loop's initial struggle really taught Altman the hard lessons of depending on gatekeepers and, the inherent difficulties of scaling a product based on sensitive user data.
But then that whole dependency structure just collapses in 2007 with the seismic shift that was the launch of the iPhone and then the SDK, the software development kit.
That release just flipped the entire mobile industry on its head overnight.
Wow.
Power shifted instantly and decisively from the carriers to the independent developers. Looped had to adapt fast to this new paradigm.
Did they manage it?
They did manage to pivot, yeah. Eventually gaining enough traction to be featured in Apple TV at one point, apparently. But despite all that effort, the company eventually sold for $43.4 million.
Which sounds like a lot, but
Sequoia considered it just okay. Not the stellar home run return they typically chase.
what's fascinating about that sale, though, according to the sources, is the aspect Altman prioritized. It wasn't just maximizing the dollar figure.
No, exactly. The sources really highlight that his main focus during those sale negotiations was keeping his core team together.
Loyalty.
Yeah, that early theme of loyalty and leadership. Prioritizing his people and their continued employment, even when the financial outcome was, well, less than ideal. It's an important early indicator of his management style.
A style we'll definitely see challenged dramatically later on.
Yeah, absolutely.
So he then enters the world of Y Combinator, first as an applicant, then a partner, and eventually president. And this connection with Paul Graham becomes foundational. This is also where the sources draw a really compelling parallel between Altman and Steve Jobs.
Yeah, that comparison is strong, and I think it's crucial to understanding his rise. The sources note that, like Jobs, Altman wasn't primarily a deep code writer or, an engineer by trade.
Right.
His rapid ascent and influence were instead driven by this extraordinary ability to network, to communicate, and to create leverage. He's characterized not as the chief engineer, but as the visionary, the evangelizer, and the deal maker.
Or maybe more cynically, simply the promoter.
Or the promoter, exactly.
Okay.
That role seems to be his true specialty, taking something that looks impossible.
And just making it happen through sheer force of will and, maybe more importantly, endless fundraising.
Exactly. Keech Hagee notes this specifically. Altman's specialty, honed during his time leading Y Combinator, was taking the nearly impossible, convincing others that it was possible, and then relentlessly raising massive funds until the sheer scale of the investment pool made the previously impossible concept become possible. It's a strategy built on optimism, relentless scale, and just overwhelming capital.
So that relentless ambition and that ability to promote the impossible, it leads us directly to the complex, maybe contradictory genesis of OpenAI.
Right.
This is where that core tension between idealism and stark corporate reality truly ignites, isn't it?
It really does. The initial mandate, established back in 2015 when it was co-founded by Altman, Elon Musk, Ilya Sutskever, and others, it was staggeringly bold.
What was it exactly?
They set out to safely create artificial general intelligence AGI explicitly to benefit humanity as a whole. And they specifically stated it must be unconstrained by the need to generate financial return.
Wow. So not a standard startup at all. It was designed as a moral mandate, almost like a public trust.
That was the idea, yeah. And this foundation was heavily influenced by profound existential fears, the X risk.
Ah, the existential risk.
Absolutely. The co-founders were galvanized by these worries about existential risk, driven by philosophical figures like Eliezer Yudkowsky and Nick Bostrom. We're talking about the fear that runaway superintelligence could catastrophically malfunction.
Bostrom's famous paperclip maximizer thought experiment is central here, isn't it?
It really is.
Let's maybe pause on that for a second. For our listener who might know the name but not the full implications, what exactly is the paperclip maximizer and why was it so terrifying to the founders?
Okay, yeah. The thought experiment goes something like this. Imagine you create a super intelligent AI and you give it a seemingly simple, maybe harmless goal, like maximizing the production of paperclips.
Okay, seems innocent enough.
Right. But because it's optimized solely for that goal and it lacks a human value system, its relentless exponential pursuit of paperclips could lead it to consume all available resources, metals, energy, eventually even turning human life itself into raw material, just to maximize its paperclip output. The horror isn't malice, it's total indifference. It highlights that even a benevolent-sounding AGI goal can lead to catastrophe if it's not perfectly aligned with complex, nuanced human values.
Okay.
That fear of massive unintended consequences was really the bedrock of OpenAI's foundation back in 2015.
And those existential fears, they led them to create what has to be the most bizarre corporate governance structure in modern history.
It is deeply complex, almost ridiculously so, but necessarily so, according to the founders.
How did it work?
They established a nonprofit parent board. And this board had a fiduciary duty not to shareholders, but explicitly to humanity.
To humanity.
This board, nonprofit entity, was set up to control a for-profit company underneath it. And critically, investor profits in that for-profit were actually capped.
A capped profit structure. Okay, why this specific complicated legal arrangement? Why not just stay a pure nonprofit if the goal was humanity?
Well, they realized pretty quickly that developing AGI was going to cost astronomical sums of money. We're talking tens of billions, eventually maybe hundreds of billions. Pure nonprofit funding just wouldn't cut it.
Right, the scale is immense.
Exactly. So the capped profit mechanism was the compromise. Investors, like Microsoft eventually, could invest staggering amounts of capital, but they were legally barred from taking unlimited returns.
What was the cap? Do we know?
The sources suggest the returns were capped at a specific multiple, often rumored to be around 100 times the initial investment, something like that, though the exact figure isn't public.
Okay.
Once that cap is hit, theoretically, all subsequent profits revert back to the nonprofit parent entity for the benefit of humanity.
So in theory, this hybrid model was an explicit attempt to build safety rails directly into the foundation. It acknowledged that AGI posed these unique ethical challenges that normal business structures, driven purely by infinite profit maximization, simply couldn't handle.
Exactly. It was meant to be safety by design, using a legal structure as a constraint on the technological imperative. But that tension open science versus safety deployment, it emerged almost immediately, even before the big AGI race really began.
How did that manifest initially? Where did we first see that tension?
It really manifested with GPT-2. The OpenAI team controversially held back the full, highly capable version of that model from the public.
Why?
Due to concerns about malicious applications, specifically the potential for mass dissemination of deepfakes and misinformation. They were already wrestling with the dual, terrifying nature of the power they were creating.
Okay.
Then the landscape just changes irrevocably. On November 30, 2022, with the arrival of ChatGPT.
An accidental superstar, as the sources describe it, that shifted the entire industry.
Overnight sensation doesn't even cover it.
Right.
ChatGPT was just a proof of concept that exploded. It gained 100 million users in under 3 months.
Which is just staggering. It's unbelievable. Its accessibility and performance caused Google to internally declare a code red. It showed the incredible power of a user-friendly interface combined with these research breakthroughs.
Right.
This sudden, unexpected public-facing success. That's where the need for speed really started to overwhelm the original safety focus, arguably.
Speaking of internal conflict, the tension with Elon Musk goes back years, right? Preceding the ChatGPT boom. He co-founded OpenAI, yet he famously left back in 2018.
Yeah, Musk left due to profoundly clashing visions about the direction, the pace, and the control of the organization. Musk was and is deeply worried about uncontrolled AI growth, and he pushed for much stronger, maybe slower, oversight. A significant point of contention, which became very public, was OpenAI's shift.
The shift from pure nonprofit.
Exactly, from a pure nonprofit lab toward becoming this capped profit subsidiary with such close ties to Microsoft.
And Musk consistently criticized this transition, right? Stating it prioritized the need for capital and eventual profit over the original mission of solely serving humanity. That's the absolute core of their ongoing rivalry.
Yeah.
A rivalry that now includes Musk's competing venture, XAI.
Right.
It shows these fundamental differences in philosophy. Musk advocates for a slower, safety-first, more heavily constrained approach, even if it delays AGI. Altman embraces a faster, accelerated pace, while simultaneously, acknowledging the absolute necessity of responsible growth.
So they fundamentally disagree on the timeline, the necessity of constraints, and ultimately who should hold the power.
That sums it pretty well.
This clash of philosophies brings us directly to the core of the crisis of trust, the firing in November 2023. And this wasn't just about strategy or speed, was it? It was deeply personal, complicated by ideological lobbying from external forces. Specifically, the sources detail pressure from Peter Thiel.
Yeah, this external lobbying is a crucial and maybe underreported factor in the internal drama that led to the board's decision. Peter Thiel, the tech venture capitalist, well-known ideological firebrand, he repeatedly urged Sam Altman to purge employees associated with effective altruism, or EA, and its associated AI safety circles.
Wait, why is Thiel so obsessed with effective altruism? What was his issue there?
Thiel viewed them as like an ideological cancer within the company. He warned Altman in these extreme, almost conspiratorial terms that Eliezer Yudkowsky, a key figure in the X-Risk community, had programmed half the people in your company to believe in that stuff. The stuff being the idea that preventing runaway AI was a greater moral priority than, say, curing global poverty or achieving AGI quickly.
So Thiel was basically predicting that the AI safety people, the EAs, who had strategically pivoted much of their focus from ending global poverty to preventing runaway AI, would ultimately destroy OpenAI by slowing development down too much.
Exactly. He saw the safety focus as existential sabotage, pure and simple. And Altman's alleged response, which the sources highlight, was notably dismissive. He seemed to frame the internal safety concerns as a past management problem, referencing his split with Musk. Well, it was kind of true of Elon, but we got rid of Elon.
Oh.
This anecdote, if true, it shows Altman treating these deep-seated EA safety concerns as merely a human resource issue or a management friction point to be eliminated, rather than an existential framework that maybe should govern their mission.
Okay, so this philosophical tension was clearly building for months, driven internally by board members losing trust, specifically due to perceived deception and poor corporate governance by Altman. This brings us to the famous dossier of deception.
Yeah, the sources paint a pretty clear picture of an erosion of candor over time. Chief scientist Ilya Sutskever and CTO Mira Murati were apparently quietly compiling a dossier against Altman, detailing instances where he seemed to misrepresent facts to the board or other executives.
Can we get into the specifics of what was allegedly misrepresented? Because the board's public statement was that he was fired for not being consistently candid. That's pretty vague.
Right. Well, one of the clearest and maybe most damaging examples cited was Altman allegedly misrepresenting safety approvals for 3 controversial GPT-4 enhancements.
Okay.
During one pivotal board meeting, Altman apparently claimed the Joint Safety Board, that's the internal mechanism responsible for ensuring ethical deployment, had approved all 3 enhancements. But when a skeptical board member pressed for immediate proof, and the records were checked right then and there, They found that only one of the three had actually been approved.
Oh, wow.
The other two, which were presumably higher risk deployments, had been unilaterally moved forward without the mandated safety sign-off.
That is a severe breach of candor, especially in a company where the whole purpose of the board is supposed to be the ultimate safety check against runaway technology.
Exactly.
What other alleged lies were in that dossier that reinforced the board's need to act?
Well, according to the sources, there were dozens of examples. Alleged lies, toxic behavior, intentional misdirection. Often backed up by Slack screenshots, apparently.
Like what?
Another critical example detailed in Howe's book involves the internal release of GPT-4 Turbo. Altman allegedly falsely claimed to Mira Murati that the legal department had approved the release without requiring a joint safety board review.
Okay.
But when Murati checked with the top lawyer, the lawyer flatly denied ever making that statement or granting that approval. So this pattern of internal misdirection, basically lying about approvals to accelerate deployment, that was the core reason the nonprofit board felt they had lost trust and ultimately had to act.
And there was a major, tangible red flag regarding corporate governance that the board was completely unaware of, a serious conflict of interest.
Yes, the existence of a secretive OpenAI startup fund, which was personally owned and controlled by Sam Altman.
And the board didn't know.
The board members had not been officially informed about it, according to the sources. This was seen as a profound conflict of interest.
How so?
Well, Altman, as the CEO of the safety-focused capped profit entity, was personally investing in and profiting from startups building on the very technology that the nonprofit board was meant to be controlling for humanity.
Right.
That lack of transparency, controlling a secretive external fund while overseeing the core technology. It just strengthened the board's resolve that governance had fundamentally failed.
The straw that broke the camel's back, though, involved Microsoft, their largest financial backer. The sources mention an India connection. What was that?
This seems to be the pivotal moment that convinced the independent board members that the integrity of their safety constraints was being utterly disregarded. Microsoft, apparently without explicit approval from the independent board, launched an unauthorized test deployment of GPT-4 in India. This is the first time the highly powerful model had been deployed outside of OpenAI's controlled testing environment.
And the board didn't know.
The nonprofit board members were completely blindsided. They learned about this rogue deployment informally, not through official channels. This governance breach, combined with the pattern of deception in the dossier, it led directly to the firing.
And thus, the rapid, chaotic, and just incredibly dramatic 5-day reinstatement saga began. Altman was fired on November 17th, 2023, specifically for not being consistently candid.
It was corporate chaos, unlike anything Silicon Valley had really seen before. The board tried to install Mira Murati as interim CEO,
right?
But she quickly sided with the employees against the board itself. Then a massive internal revolt occurred. Nearly all of OpenAI's 700-plus employees signed a letter threatening to quit immediately unless Altman and Greg Brockman were reinstated.
That level of loyalty, I mean, a willingness to risk their entire careers, it's astounding. It speaks volumes about the culture Altman fostered, for better or worse.
It really does. And even Ilya Sutskever, the chief scientist who has spearheaded the coup, reversed his stance. It was a dramatic turnabout, attributed in part, according to some accounts, to the emotional pleas and tears of Anna Brockman, Greg Brockman's wife, which really highlighted the human cost of this corporate warfare. Sutskever's reversal was critical because it stripped the board of their scientific legitimacy.
But the final, definitive nail in the board's coffin was the intervention of Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella.
Nadella stepped in, executed a brilliant strategic move, really. He publicly offered both Altman and Greg Brockman roles, leading a new advanced AI research lab at Microsoft.
Putting maximum pressure on the board.
Exactly. Faced with an imminent, massive employee defection to their largest partner and pressure from that key financial partner, the board was essentially given an ultimatum. They were forced to reinstate Altman within days.
So the outcome of the brief firing, ironically, didn't diminish Altman at all?
Not at all. It completely solidified his power. It demonstrated his unshakable loyalty base and, as one source put it, his uncanny ability to come back stronger than he was when he left.
Okay, so we have this massive event, and now we have these two deeply researched books coming out, offering two completely contrasting narratives of the titan at the helm. This duality seems critical to understanding him.
Absolutely.
Let's start with The Optimist by Keech Hagee, that same visionary narrative you mentioned.
Right. Hagee's book portrays Altman as a genuine almost historical genius who is fundamentally trying to change the world. In this view, he's the indispensable master strategist, the visionary, the evangelizer, and the deal maker. This narrative emphasizes his deep, almost spiritual obsession with human progress, looking far beyond just the next quarter's earnings.
And we see that kind of historic scope reflected in his personal life too, right? With his collection of hand axes.
Absolutely. The sources note he owns 3 hand axes used by hominids tens of thousands of years ago.
Right.
It's like a physical manifestation of his philosophy.
Awesome.
He sees humanity's journey as this long march toward greater intelligence and better tool use. He's connecting humanity's distant past, defined by these early tools, to its technologically ambitious future, defined by AGI.
Interesting. And this portrait suggests a belief in collaborative progress, that this immense power shouldn't just be centralized in one corporation.
Yes. Hagee highlights Altman's belief that public and private money must fundamentally work together to ensure AI benefits everyone, not just, shareholders or elites. It's a compelling portrait of someone operating with an almost religious conviction in technological progress, viewing himself as the necessary accelerator of human destiny.
But then we switch dramatically to Empire of AI by Karen Howe, and we are hit with the Satan power-hungry empire builder narrative. It feels like a completely different person.
It's a jarring shift. This portrait is far darker, suggests manipulation, cunning. Altman is viewed here as a power-hungry executive who uses and exploits people, maybe operating without a consistent internal moral compass. House sources suggest he excels at doublespeak, molding himself and his rhetoric precisely to the needs of his audience, whether he's talking to skeptical safety researchers, massive corporate investors, or, the global public.
This is where we get that truly stark and highly quoted assessment from his mentor, Paul Graham, which paints him as this natural survivor and conqueror.
Yeah, Graham's assessment is chillingly direct. He reportedly said, "You could parachute him into an island full of cannibals and come back in 5 years, and he would be the king."
Wow.
This isn't really a compliment on his technological prowess. It's an observation on his fundamental, perhaps ruthless ability to command loyalty and power in any social system, regardless of the ethical constraints.
And Howe's book doesn't just critique Altman the man, it critiques the entire OpenAI operation, painting it as an AI colonialist. What's the basis for that strong language?
Well, the critique centers on the global footprint and maybe the hidden human costs of scaling AI. The book notes that to refine and align these large language models, teaching them what's safe and unsafe content, OpenAI relies heavily on low-wage contract workers in Africa and other developing nations. These workers are paid minimal rates to sift through and categorize potentially graphic, disturbing, or toxic content.
Okay, the hidden labor.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Furthermore, the sheer scale of the operation is criticized for its environmental impact, noting the use of huge amounts of water and electricity for training and deployment, with what Howe suggests is maybe little regard for the local environment or infrastructure.
The sources also touch briefly on the complex and sometimes tragic personal picture that exists behind the public figure, which further complicates this dual narrative.
Yes, both books do touch on difficult family dynamics. The sources mention public allegations of abuse from his sister Annie Altman, directed at her brothers. These accusations have become part of the public record surrounding this family. The family denies these specific allegations and attributes these complexities to mental health factors. The analysis here, I think, is crucial. These deeply differing portraits, including the complicated personal details, they reinforce that the story of AGI development, however unprecedented its consequences might be, it remains fundamentally a profoundly human one.
It's a constant reminder that the person steering this revolution is complicated, relentless, and, well, imperfect, like all humans.
Precisely.
Let's shift now to the philosophical side. What is Altman's ultimate accelerated vision for this intelligence age? And what does he believe comes next in the, say, short term?
Well, his core belief seems to be that we are living through one of the biggest economic and social shifts since the Industrial Revolution. He views the present not as the peak of AI, but merely the dawn of the intelligence age.
Just the beginning.
Just the beginning. He asserts pretty candidly that current AI models are already better than most humans at a lot of economically valuable work. Furthermore, he holds this almost fatalistic view of technological progress. Biological intelligence will always eventually create machine intelligence. It is, in his view, destiny.
That fatalistic view that AGI is inevitable, that must profoundly impact his strategy, right? If it's destiny, then the only real variable is speed.
Precisely. The core strategy shifts from if to when and how fast. And he's already focused on the immediate next stage. He predicts the imminent rise of AI agents.
AI agents, what does that look like practically for us, the user? What does that mean?
His prediction for, say, 2025 focuses on the rise of these AI agents. Think of them as personalized digital interns that never sleep.
Okay.
They can handle increasingly complex multi-step tasks for you. They move beyond being just simple chatbots to actually executing projects, managing finances, automating entire workflows.
It's much more proactive.
Much more proactive. And eventually these agents will mature into superintelligence, a concept he describes rather simply as doing anything else, meaning achieving breakthroughs that human teams alone cannot. Curing cancer, solving climate change, mastering nuclear fusion, the really big stuff.
But he tempers that anxiety about human obsolescence with a vision of augmentation and maybe more leisure time.
He does. He's keen to stress that AI isn't here to replace us entirely, but to augment us, leading potentially to a massive increase in personal free time and creativity.
Right.
The sources offer that kind of comforting image. Less spreadsheet work, more time for creative pursuits or artisanal hobbies like, sourdough baking.
Right. The economic value shifts from routine tasks to uniquely human skills.
That's the idea.
He also stresses the ethical vision necessary for this massive transformation. He's not completely ignoring the potential for global manipulation or surveillance, even if his actions are often criticized as being too fast.
Yeah, to his credit, he was involved in launching the AI Ethics Council, aiming to ensure that AI development is focused on principles like safety, transparency, fairness, and inclusivity. He's also intensely focused on the problem of distribution.
Distribution of
the benefits. If AGI is the most powerful tool ever created, he argues, it shouldn't just be an advantage for Wall Street or wealthy nations. It needs to be widespread.
Okay, so what is his key idea for leveling the playing field regarding access to this powerful AI?
It's this concept of giving everyone a personal compute budget.
Compute budget.
Yeah. This would grant every individual a foundational allocation of access to powerful AI resources, effectively democratizing compute power. The idea is that you shouldn't have to, sell a kidney just to afford to run a powerful AGI model.
Right.
He wants AI to serve humanity universally, not the other way around, through this kind of structured, equitable distribution model.
This brings us back to the core contradiction of the man and the mission, though. He embraces these highest ideals of serving humanity while seemingly accepting the absolute highest risks. The sources provide one quote that offers just a chillingly candid dose of realism about this whole endeavor.
Yeah, this quote. It perfectly encapsulates the maybe unique Silicon Valley mindset when confronting existential risk. He stated, AI will probably most likely lead to the end of the world, but in the meantime, there'll be great companies.
Let's just pause on that for a second. That is an absolutely astonishing statement to come from the person accelerating the technology.
It is.
Doesn't that fundamentally contradict the entire original mission of safety by design? If he acknowledges the risk of global catastrophe, why the relentless acceleration?
That is the central paradox, isn't it? The quote suggests this high-stakes, almost reckless optimism. It implies that since AGI is destined to happen anyway, that technological inevitability we talked about,
right,
the financial rewards and the potential societal good before the potential apocalypse somehow justify the acceleration. It's an intellectual gamble, maybe, that the benefits can be harvested before the potential existential consequences arrive.
So he acknowledges the theoretical risk while prioritizing the practical, immediate reality of innovation and, profit generation.
That seems to be one interpretation, yes. It's deeply complex.
Given that inevitability and the high stakes, what does he advise humans to focus on in this new intelligence age? What skills matter?
He advises humans to abandon the pursuit of easily automatable, narrow technical skills. Instead, he argues the future belongs to those who develop general skills.
Like what?
And focus intensely on uniquely human traits. Willpower, creativity, and, maybe most importantly, the ability to learn faster and adapt quicker than a machine that literally never forgets a piece of information.
So the core human skill becomes flexibility, adaptability.
Exactly, learning how to learn constantly.
So what does this all mean for us, wrapping up? We've traced this relentless push toward AGI, fueled by Altman's ambition and singular vision, juxtaposed with the immense corporate conflict and ethical reckoning surrounding safety, governance, and power that nearly ended his reign just last year.
Yeah, we've seen that central tension innovation versus safety manifest in philosophical battles, boardroom coups, accusations of deception, the works. Altman's core belief, though, it seems to remain that AGI is inevitable, a form of technological destiny, driven by that desire for scale that was planted way back in his youth.
And if the creation of superintelligence is truly destiny, what does that imply about human control? The sources really leave us with a profoundly unsettling question here. How much agency do we truly have over the timeline, the ethics, or the distribution of this unprecedented power if the man steering the ship believes it's going to happen regardless of our fears or plans?
It's a huge question. And let's bring it back one last time to the dramatic collapse of the board. The sources highlight that the board fired Altman specifically over issues of candidness and governance. His alleged deception regarding approvals, the secret fund.
Right, not speed itself.
Not the speed of AI development itself, exactly. And that brings us to a provocative final thought for you, the listener, to chew on. Is the greatest threat to safety in the coming intelligence age the technology itself, which is ultimately just a tool? Or is it the flawed human leaders racing to control, accelerate, and maybe profit from it?
Something to ponder as you look toward the age of the digital intern and the superintelligence that might follow. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.